new GM came in and started talking to me like, what do you want? What do you want to do? Like, what is your desire? I was like, I don't know. I want to run a ski resort one day. And she was like, you can.
Welcome to the Storm. I'm your host, Stuart Winchester. Longtime listeners know that I love Vermont, and there is no mountain in Vermont that I love more than Stowe. Strangely, this is the only Vermont ski area over 1,000 vertical feet with a chairlift that I've never hosted on the podcast, but I am changing that today. Before we get to Stowe, thank you so much for being here. I am especially and sincerely grateful to all of my paid subscribers who have helped me transform the Storm into a sustainable small business. I really cannot thank you enough for your support of independent ski journalism. If you would like to join them and support this mission, you can do so by upgrading to the paid tier of the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast at stormskiing.com. That will give you everything below the paywall, which is about 80% of all Storm content. You can also support the Storm by picking up a hat, hoodie, t-shirt, sticker, or other merch at the Storm store at stormskiing.myshopify.com. New designs just dropped. Go check those out. And please follow the Storm on X, Instagram, or YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. You can now watch the podcast on Substack or YouTube. All right, I am fired up to tell you about a brand new partner today, Island Snow Bus. Hey, Long Island and Queens skiers. I know you have a long way to drive for skiing. Trust me, I am in your same neighborhood. If you are tired of waking up in the middle of the night and driving alone for hours and hours to the bump, then driving all the way home after, Island Snow Bus is for you. With pickups throughout Suffolk and Nassau counties and in eastern Queens near the Whitestone Bridge, Island Snow Bus plans single and multi-day trips to some of the well-known ski areas in the region, including Stratton, Killington, Mount Snow, Jay Peak, Sugarloaf, Whiteface, Gore, Bel Air, and Hunter. And some surprises if a big storm rolls through. They will throw together a pop-up trip. Island Snow Bus offers packages that include both lift tickets and transportation. Or if you're rocking your own pass, you can just pay for the bus ride. Yes, it's an early pickup, but then you crash out and you are ready to ski upon arrival. And there are always plenty of other folks looking for someone to ski with if you are tired of skiing alone. To check out Island Snow Bus's 2025-26 winter calendar, visit islandsnowbus.com and use code STORM for $50 off your first trip. That is a one-time code for each user. All right, time for episode 220 of the Storm Skiing Podcast. Mike Giorgio, Vice President and General Manager of Stowe Mountain, Vermont. My guest today is entering his second winter as Vice President and General Manager of Stowe Mountain, Vermont. Established on the flanks of Mount Mansfield, the highest peak in Vermont, in 1934, Stowe is one of the oldest and most iconic resorts in American skiing. The resort offers a 2,360-foot vertical drop with 12 lifts serving 485 acres, including the mountain's legendary front four expert trails. With 314 inches of average annual snowfall, Stowe is one of the snowiest ski areas in eastern North America. Stowe is one of 3 ski areas operated by Vail Resorts in Vermont, one of 7 in New England, and one of 42 around the world. Prior to earning the top job at Stowe, he ran a half dozen of Vail's Midwest ski areas out of Mount Brighton, Michigan, and spent 10 years as executive chef of Mount Snow, Vermont. Mike Giorgio is my guest. Mike, welcome to the Storm. I cannot tell you how pumped up I am to finally explore what may be New England's greatest ski area on the Storm Skiing Podcast. I so appreciate you making the time to do it as you ramp up the ski season. How's life in Vermont today, Mike?
Yeah, things are great in Vermont. Thanks so much for having me, Stuart. I'm really stoked and honored to be on the pod. And yeah, I'll say it is the best ski resort in New England.
You're not going to get a lot of argument from me. I would say it has peers, but no betters. You've spent a lot of time in Vermont, as I said, Mike, spent a decade at Mount Snow. So a lot of time to familiarize yourself with the region. Stowe is a very particular animal, though. And I imagine as you settle in to your second winter, you're kind of tweaking your approach a little bit, maybe as you learn the mountain, learn the people, learn the very specific culture of that place. So lay this out for us, Mike. What did you learn from the first year that might, about Stowe, that might change the way you go into winter 2025 to 26?
Yeah, I mean, last year was just absolutely amazing, right? Like it was a legendary snow season. And we had like 2 straight months of below freezing temperatures. So like we just saw amazing ski conditions and it was amazing. Everybody kept telling me, it's not like this all the time. It rains here in Vermont. And I was like, yeah, I've lived in Vermont a long time in Southern Vermont. So I'm ready for that side of it as well. I think going into this season, I thought that I understood the passion and the history and how people care and think about this resort. I thought I understood that from like my previous experience of coming to Stowe and just my first couple of months being here. But after being around for a full year and just talking to so many folks in the community and locals and skiers and riders and mountain bikers and everybody else around here that just kind of exists, like the passion for this place and its history informs every decision that I think me and my team make and will continue to make in the future. And then on top of it, like just thinking about how special this place is and the terrain and the opportunities is just really informing everything when I'm thinking about, the guest experience, the employee experience, and really how to lean into that side of things. You mentioned my time in food and beverage, and I'd say, yeah, that taught me like how important service is, right? We are all in this for the same reason. And like my passion is around giving really high quality guest service and employee service, right? Like my job is to serve the employees and so that they can really bring that forward. And so that's what I'm really focused on this season.
Can you talk a little bit more about what it is specifically that makes the mountain unique and the community unique?
Sure. Yeah, I think obviously the terrain, like goes without saying, like Mount Mansfield, it is just a spectacular place. And like the spruce side is also amazing as well. There's a lot of like sleeper terrain on that side, I think, that folks don't often think about. Yeah, so the terrain piece, the front four, the backcountry accessibility is amazing. The Nordic Center is amazing, right? It really stands out as a unique, a unique part of the history here. And then the community as this is a true year-round mountain community, right? The people here like live and breathe the woods and the mountains and the ski terrain, and like that is just not something. It exists obviously throughout Vermont and New England, but it feels so just intense and elevated here to another degree. It's amazing.
So it's a special mountain, and it's a very singular community, and more I think like a Western ski town than just about anywhere else in the East, as far as I can tell, as far as the singular folks, like that's the mountain and that's where they want to be. I'm curious, you mentioned your team a lot, and I think you came into what I would say is a challenging professional situation, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean you were the third head of Stowe in 3 years. And I've written a lot about this, and I put the question directly to your CEO, Rob Katz, in a podcast a couple months ago. I said, look, Rob, you're shifting leaders around a lot, and that can be disconcerting for the community. And I use Stowe as an example. And he said, look, Mike can call Bobby Murphy, who's now leading Beaver Creek, and Shannon Bueller, your 2 predecessors at Stowe, who's now leading Keystone, anytime. And it's all still within the system. And he said, we like this culture of leadership and advancement, and we're not going to change it. We believe that it works. So I want to get your perspective on this as someone coming in who knew Vermont, but had been out of the region for a while, you're aware of the culture of Stowe and what Stowe means, right, as an abstract thing. What did that look like for you to come in to such an iconic place and be the guy in charge? And how much did you have to lean on institutional knowledge and your predecessors and still do to really, respect and appreciate, but still lead the place?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I agree with what Rob said, right? Like, I think I would add to that also, like, our company has so many super talented, ambitious individuals that are just driven, right, to do better and grow and themselves as well as the resorts. So like that's why I love this company so much. It's offered that opportunity to me where I don't know, previously maybe I didn't feel like I always had that opportunity. And so that piece is powerful. I agree with what Rob said. Coming here I was nervous. Moving is nerve wracking, and like it did feel like full circle, like I'm home, right? Because my kids were born in Vermont, right? Like I've had the most important moments of my life in Vermont, right? Like me and my wife, we didn't get married in Vermont, but we grew our relationship here and build our family here. So coming back was like exciting. And I was a little nervous, right? Like it's a new place. There's history here. There's expectations are really high. And then when I got here, like I remember what I do always whenever I go into this weekend or whatever it may be is like the team here on the ground is amazing. They know what they're doing. They're so good at what they do. We've got so many tenured folks here that have just been leading these teams on the ground for so long that like it put me right back into that mentality of like, yes, that there is that resource like Bobby Murphy or Shannon that I do reach out to, right? But the team here on the ground is so amazing, and everybody's welcoming. Like there's not a moment in town that I don't feel that way, right? Like standing at a soccer game with my kids this weekend, I was like talking to people and we're talking about the excitement around the mountain, and everybody's so welcoming and like wants to know more. They're curious more than anything, right? And like I love that because I love talking about this resort. I love talking about skiing and riding, and I love talking about, my leadership philosophies or whatever it may be. And so like, it's been really amazing. And yeah, people also, sometimes there's, change can be disruptive, but I think in a good way.
A lot of folks I talk to within Vail and who have come through the Vail system and now work elsewhere, and also just industry observers in general, are always very complimentary of Vail's leadership development program. So I want to look at your specific example, and if I get any of the timeline wrong, just correct me. So when you were at Mount Snow, I'm assuming you were working for Peak Resorts, probably when they purchased it, and I don't have that data off the top of my head. So you worked for Peak for some time, I'm assuming. Then Vail bought it, and then you had these other opportunities. So 10 years as food and bev and some time before that, and we can talk about that a little bit down in Rhode Island. So assuming that's kind of where your career track was, talk about how that changed when Vail came into town and how you realized that you may have opportunities beyond that within skiing, and then how the company facilitated that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I came into this industry a little bit different than most people, right? Like I love the mountains. I've always been in love with the mountains, and I got this opportunity to be the executive chef at a hotel in a ski resort in Vermont. And I don't think I really understood what that meant at the time. And so I came into it for that role, and just like I said, I've always been ambitious. I've always wanted more. I spent a lot of time in the city, and I was ready to kind of connect with the mountains again. And then, I understood this like huge industry, or I started to understand this huge industry that exists, right? And like really started to work with my peers at Mount Snow, like so many amazing leaders in my time down there, that it just made me want to make this my career. And I didn't always know what that meant. I thought, I could be in hospitality. I knew hotels really well. I know restaurants really well. Service is what I do. And like, not to anybody's fault, but I just never pictured myself as a general manager of a ski resort. Like, it's just not something I knew in myself that I could do it, but it was just seemed like something like you have to be a mountain operator, you have to be a marketing professional, or something like that. And then, 2019, Vail Resorts bought the company, and I heard a lot of different things, and then really quickly realized this is where I want to be. This is amazing, right? I got immediate opportunities. The new GM, Tracy Bartels, came in and started talking to me about questions that I never had. Like, what do you want? What do you want to do? Like, what is your desire?
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like, I was like, I don't know. I want to run a ski resort one day. And she was like, you can. And I was like, really? Like, nobody ever said that to me. And that was powerful. And then I started like steeping myself in the leadership of the company and learning more about the company. And I started like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn everything I can about this operation. And I learned so much just through osmosis, just through being in the room, right? Which is what we talk a lot about here, right? Is just giving people a seat at the table and allowing them to see their future. And so that was really powerful. And then I applied for a couple of like directors, like of food and beverage roles at like Vail and Keystone and some other ones. And there were certainly people who were more tenured and deserving of those roles. And I didn't get those roles. And this opportunity at Brighton popped up, and I was like talking to Tracy, and she's like, you can do this. You could do that job. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I applied, and it's changed my life. It's changed my family's life. It's been amazing.
That's incredible, and it's one of the best illustrations I've heard of what it's like inside the machine, and I mean that in a positive way, and to be able to evolve and advance. I want to get to Mount Brighton in a second, but I want to set this up because I'm from Michigan, so I always like to get the outsider's perspective. So you're a New England guy, born and raised? Jersey. Okay.
Hackensack, New Jersey, right over the bridge from, I think, where you live right now, right?
Yeah. I'm in the city now. I'm in Brooklyn. So were you a Vernon Valley Great Gorge guy? Did you ski as a kid?
Back in the day when it was still Vernon Valley. I didn't really. So I should like preface this like that. I did go there to ski and ride, but I only really did that a handful of times growing up. It was not a thing that I did, which is like even adds to like I think I have this unique entry into this industry. I was an ocean person, right? Like I grew up on boards, but like in the water, and I grew up like I played hockey, and so like I was like industry adjacent for sure, but like never really. It wasn't like my family didn't go on big ski trips every year to Vermont or anything like that. I probably spent more time at Action Park than I did at when there was snow on the ground there.
A survivor.
Yeah, I am a survivor. Absolutely, yeah. So it's just it was a different entry for me, and growing up was mostly playing in the water.
Yeah, this is actually I'm sure you know this, but Mike Salamano, the president of Killington, also grew up in Jersey.
Just this weekend, actually, at the Vermont Ski Area Association.
Yeah, I don't know how your timelines overlapped, but certainly they overlap right now. So you're in Jersey, and then I believe that you went and worked in Rhode Island for a while. So take us on this journey, Mike. How did you get up to New England? And then was Mount Snow was it just a job opportunity and skiing was adjacent and you rediscovered it? Or take us into this and layer over however you can your ski story. Yeah.
So I worked in restaurants. That typical chef story. I started washing dishes when I was like 14 or whatever, and quickly just fell in love with it. Right, like I used to make the joke that this is actually true. On I believe it was on Wednesdays, our chef used to get all of the meat and he'd butcher, but I couldn't make it there in time, so I don't know. I might have missed a class or two at the end of the day in order to get there to look at a butcher better. So I just had this passion for service that I couldn't put words to it at the time, but I just knew I loved this thing, and it was cooking at that time. And so I went to Johnson & Wales in Miami actually for 2 years. That like just a host like of different places down there, did a bunch of catering and worked in some smaller boutique hotels and did some work in different restaurants, and then came to Providence, Rhode Island to finish my my culinary degree and get my master's in Rhode Island. Which, Providence, Rhode Island's an awesome place, great food scene. And Yeah, and I in order to like kind of pay for some of my education, I ended up being like a teaching assistant and fellow, which for Johnson Wales means like you're in a kitchen cooking and leading.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Radisson Airport Hotel in Warwick, Rhode Island was where that program, Johnson Wales owned and operated that hotel. And back in its heyday, it was this like mecca of like culinary excellence, and like that's where you learn how to do everything well for the like for the university, right? And so I just so much exposure to amazing chefs and front of the house professionals, and like industry professionals from that standpoint that like I quickly just grew in hotels. And yeah, like I made a decision not to go back to restaurants because I love having health benefits and things like that. And so, and then, I was working in hotels there. And one of my buddies, who was also a chef in Providence, he served tables at Mount Snow, I think 2 days a week to get a pass.
Okay.
And he knew that I was looking to get out of the city. He knew that I was looking to find the next thing. I was the executive sous chef at the time. I kind of learned everything I could. And he's like, hey, I know this place. It's not too far from here. It's up in the mountains, and it's pretty cool. And they really need an executive chef. And I was like, all right, I'll apply. And I did. And like a week or so later, I got an opportunity to drive up there. And there was this, I drove up there, which I didn't understand what it was, but it was President's Week.
Okay.
Right? So I drive up there, and I interviewed and stayed there. And then there was a snowstorm, and I couldn't get back. And it was just, and I fell in love with it right there. And I accepted the role that day. And the rest is kind of just like history. I started just grinding really hard, put my head down, and learned everything I could. And so fortunate. Like Kelly Pollock was the one who put me in my beverage director role, right? So like that, then to see her go to lead NSAA, and like just so many industry professionals were there, right? Greg Fisher was there, Dave Meeker, like all these people that are just kind of throughout the industry now. I had this unique opportunity to learn from, and that was really, really powerful in those moments and kept me energized.
So you're up there for a decade. At what point did you start skiing? Did you get a pass as an employee?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had snowboarded before, like I said, and the first year I kind of just worked and then enjoyed the summer. I actually was more of like an avid rock climber than anything. So I spent that whole summer trying to find like bouldering routes and like digging really deep into that. There's not too much of that in Southern Vermont, unfortunately. There's way more of it up here in the Notch, luckily. But so and then the next season I bought a snowboard and went out there, and then I ended up, because of my schedule, I didn't really go until 10 o'clock, and I worked, late into the night because that's what a chef does. And I was able to snowboard like 100+ days for like the first 5 years of living there until the new job and kids and everything else. But so I probably, it was a quick like lifestyle switch that it was never left me.
Yeah. So so that takes us to the transition from Mount Snow to Brighton. I want to set this up a little bit for the listener. So it's funny because every ski area in Vermont is so distinct, like culturally. They're all very, very different. And they could all be their own little ski state. So Mount Snow has made its name on Awesome Park, right, at Corinthia, and it really sucks in that crowd. It's also the closest 2,000-ish footer to New York City, and I think that's where most of the people flow up from as far as homeowners and things like that. So you're at this place, and historically, and while skier visit numbers aren't public anymore, historically it was the third busiest ski area in New England, behind Killington and Okemo, and ahead of Sunday River. So I don't know if that's still true, but the point is it's a very busy place, very intense, 20 lifts on 600 acres or something like that. So you get this job at Mount Brighton, and in Mount Brighton, again, setting this up for the listeners, you can correct where I'm wrong. When they built I-96, they took some infill and built up some hills, and that was the basis of Mount Brighton. And so it's this tiny place, 200 vertical, if you're stretching it. So you get assigned there. What did you know about Michigan, the Midwest skiing? And then what did you think when you got there?
Yeah, like I do want to just say one thing. Like I applied for that role and like
Hmm.
I took the role, right?
Yeah.
Like I wasn't assigned that role. Like
Hmm.
it was something I desired and went out and got. And there's, I had to interview and go through a whole process, just like any other job.
Yeah.
But like when I didn't really know. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I understood conceptually what it was, right? Well, it's where people learn, right? It's where people, like it's small, like, okay, like what did people do there? Like, what's the passion? How busy could it possibly be? And like, it's kind of like, what is it like, right? Um, and I quickly learned, right, like you deal with all the same stuff, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a smaller scale for sure, but like people are just as passionate. I'd say those Midwest resorts, right? You're from Michigan, like
Hmm.
folks are so passionate about what they do and like love that 200 feet of vertical with every inch of their
Hmm.
being. Like learning that only further ingrained in me, like why I do what I do, right? And like I learned how resilient people are, right? Especially snowmakers, groomers, and I mean everybody, but like it is just resilience is really what I learned, and I learned like a lot of really technical stuff that I got had to be down and kind of in, right? Because it's just different at these smaller resorts. Yeah, me and my wife flew out there, not really knowing what to expect, and landed in Detroit and drove to Ann Arbor. And like, yeah, we fell in love with the area. Like, it's an amazing place. Like the ski resorts are awesome and amazing. The vibe is great. Ann Arbor's an amazing place to live.
So coming from the East Coast, I have to ask, you probably didn't come with any college football loyalties. Did you ever make it to the big house?
Stuart, where we lived, we were about a 15-minute walk from the big
Okay.
house.
All right.
I actually would say like more excited about the hockey team than anything,
Yeah.
but because I'm a hockey guy, but yeah, it's an awesome place.
Yeah. The hockey
Yes,
facility
thank you.
is really, really cool. It's really special. And I've been there a couple of times. But it sounds like you adopted Michigan as a nice little home team to root for. So you're in Brighton and you have this hospitality background. Mount Brighton, maybe this has changed. The town of Brighton has some nice restaurants, but Brighton, the ski area, was never known as anything more than just cafeteria food. So your hospitality background, I'm in food background, I'm sure doesn't hurt, but that's not really the point of Mount Brighton as I understand it. So talk about coming in and learning that ops stuff and the grooming, the snowmaking, the lift operations, the schedules, the mechanical stuff. How did you go about immersing yourself? And I'm not sure to what extent Vail has a pathway for this, and to what extent it's about you being proactive and going to your team and saying, "This is what I want to learn," and working with them on an approach to integrate yourself.
I think there's a couple things there, right? So at every resort we own and operate, like we're focused on the things that people love everywhere, like
Mm-hmm.
food and beverage, right? And so like it's sometimes I have to pull back because it's something that I care so much about.
Mm-hmm.
And just let that team operate and do their thing. And we did like kind of lean into the full service restaurant that was there and kind of, I'd say, bring it back to a little bit of where it was pre-COVID. So yeah, brought like a ton of events and stuff like that there, right? Like some of the things like we just um, like little things like putting out solo stoves and having free s'mores on Sundays after
Yeah.
ski season, right? Like those kinds of things were the like stuff I was really focused on initially. And then yeah, to learn like in Vail Resorts we do have like every year everybody, all of our leaders in the company have what we refer to as an individual development plan and the IGP, right? And on that, we actually write like what we want to learn and how we want to grow. And so some of that is through experience, some of it's through like exposure, maybe a mentorship, right? Like with a peer or a line of business that you're interested in learning. So we really as from a cultural standpoint talk a lot about that. And what I did, yeah, I immersed myself in everything. I asked a lot of questions. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really important call out there of like, I ask questions to be curious and not ask questions to question, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like, there's a difference there. You have to be really subtle about the way you do that. So like when we're making snow, like, and you're telling someone in the Midwest, like some things that maybe not snow in Vermont does, like you gotta be really careful about that. So you just, I immersed myself. I made sure that I was next to the team, right? And asking their opinions and I often tell, like, I like 3 questions that my colleagues once gave me, and it's like, what's working, what's not working, and what do you need, right? And like, if and that kind of just opens up the conversation, and then just being there, experiencing it, watching, like, I think I have a very logical brain, right? I tend to catch things really quickly. So yeah, riding along in the cats, going to make snow, like going like with the lift maintenance folks, like in a basket or whatever it takes to just learn and ask questions from the teams, the professionals. That's how my approach, and it's worked pretty well. I know enough to be dangerous, as they say. Yeah, it's worked by any means.
Yeah, I think Brighton is the kind of spot that's really perfect for that sort of immersion because the footprint is very small, but there's a ton of chairlifts and there's a ton going on. So you can learn a lot very quick. It's a very compact footprint.
Yeah.
So humor me on one more Midwest line of questioning. And folks who are here for Stowe, I promise we're going to talk a lot about Stowe. But I also like to talk about Vail, especially when I have someone here who's gone through that system. So the way that Vail grew kind of surprised everyone, purchasing Wilmot and Mount Brighton and Afton Alps in Minnesota. And I thought Vail did a really nice job integrating those in and bringing them up to this Vail standard. Brighton, for example, they put in 3 brand new chairlifts in 2013, took down a bunch of antiques, and they've done a really good job integrating them. I've been more critical of Vail's integration of the Midwest resorts that it acquired through Peak, meaning the 2 in Missouri, the 1 in Indiana, Paoli Peaks, and the 4 in Ohio. And whenever possible, I like to put these critiques directly to the people who are in charge to give you a chance to respond. So I've been pretty critical of, in particular, Paoli Peaks and the very short schedules that they've posted. And the contrast I use a lot is Perfect North, which is an independent ski area, which usually operates 80 to 100 days a year. And they're very consistent. And they're also in Indiana. So there's 2 in Indiana, Paoli Peaks and Perfect North. So you, after running Brighton for a time, were promoted to a more regional position, as I understand it, where you were also overseeing Paoli Peaks and the 4 Vail ski areas in Ohio, Boston Mills, Brandywine, Alpine Valley, and Mad River, not to be confused with your neighbor, Mad River Glen, in Vermont. So talk to me about Paoli Peaks, because I use it a lot when I point and say Vail needs to do better. So set me straight here and tell me why that ski area, what are the challenges there, and what am I missing when I just say, look, Perfect North does it, you should do it too, as you oversaw that ski area and it's uneven operations from my point of view.
Sure, yeah, I think it's a fair critique, right? And hearing these things are what drives us to do better, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful. I think that we acknowledge that there's work to do around the snowmaking system there. And it's something we've been talking a lot about. It's something I talked a lot about in my tenure of overseeing that resort. And, in that couple of months, half a year that I was in that role, we did a lot of work. Like, we sent teams from all over the Midwest to Paoli Peaks in the summer to like do road testing and like all this other work to get done and like to continue to ensure that we are providing the experience that we want to and get a little bit better every year. And that one summer, right, the next, you saw it because the next, like just the electrical work that we did, the next winter, we were open 25 days more, right? And so like it takes time, it takes effort, it takes money, right? And we're still trying to operate a business and be thoughtful about how we spend our money, right? And we make huge investments in our businesses, like massive investments in our businesses, and we'll continue to do that. And yeah, Perfect North is amazing. What they do is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I would never take away how like the level of excellence that they operate at. it's also 120 something miles north of Paoli, and like 20 miles makes a big difference with temperatures sometimes. And so it's a mixture of things for sure that there's some real challenges down there for sure around the weather. It's just really difficult. And so yeah, I'm proud of the work that team does down there and continues to put in. And yeah, we can always do a little bit better, and we continue to work towards that.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer a lot, Mike. So you settled in the Midwest. Sounds like you did a lot and a lot of work that you were proud of, and worked with some great folks and learned a lot. So you're there for a number of years, and the opportunity comes up to lead Stowe. So I imagine, again, same process. You applied for it, and I imagine there were a lot of folks who would like to lead Stowe, and you ended up being the one. What was it about Stowe that intrigued you? The challenge of leading that resort, and how familiar with it were you? Had you had a chance to sneak up there when you lived in Vermont?
Yeah. I mean, I had the years that I was in director of food and beverage, I had the privilege of having a gold card. So I rode all over Vermont, and often I'd come up north, right? Me and my wife would love to go to like Waterbury or Burlington, and then yeah, snowboarding at this resort. It's like I said earlier, right? I didn't really understand the lure and like the historic nature of this place until I really like got here last year. But yeah, I was intrigued by a challenge. Like I'm ambitious, and I love a challenge, and I love when people feel so passionate about a place the way they do here. Like you just know that it's going to be an amazing place to live and to learn and to lead and do all the things that I want to be doing. And so yeah, couple that with, I'd say the area is pretty awesome, right? The restaurants are great, the community is amazing, like there's accessibility to things. And I really wanted to be back in Vermont. And I have family in the Northeast, family in New England, all the way down to Jersey, and I have two young boys, and that's just important to us. So this was the right place for a lot of reasons. And I mean, the terrain, like I just can't talk about outdoors here enough. Like I'm just so privileged to be able to live in this space. And so it was a couple of different things, but I mean, my initial reaction to seeing this was that is a challenge that I want to take on, and I know I can do it.
Quick break from Mike while I tell you about my friends at Bonfire Collective. If you are an outdoor brand or a small ski area and your marketing needs a fresh perspective from industry experts, better storytelling, rebranding, or advertising, Bonfire Collective is your solution. They are a fractional marketing team that collaborates with brands exactly like yours, including The Storm, where they helped us to ramp up our digital advertising and get moving in a space that I had neglected for far too long. I love the results, and I think you will as well. Bonfire is well rehearsed in helping brands like ours turbocharge their businesses. They took on the marketing at one New Hampshire ski area, and they doubled revenue in only 3 years. If you want to get started with Bonfire Collective, you'll want to talk to Eric. He was a co-founder of Bluebird Backcountry and a former Storm Skiing podcast guest, where he laid out that tremendous story. He knows the ski business. He is a passionate skier just like us. Visit bonfirecollective.com, or I can make that connection for you. All right, back to Mike and Stowe. It's interesting because Stowe, again, for the listeners, was Vail's first ski area in the East. And they really started big and went for this iconic place, one of the best, if not the best, in New England. So, I don't ski Stowe as much as I want to because my beat is so big. And, so I'm able to get up there every few years. I managed to make it up there this April, right after you had that big storm. I think it was the second week in April. Still had awesome coverage, the skiing blades down to the bottom. The gondola was closed by that point, but there was more than enough to keep me entertained. But I hadn't been up there since prior to the installation of the Sunrise 6-pack. And it's such an improvement over the old triple chair, which sat up a big staircase from the lodge, which I found really annoying. And the Sunrise 6 comes right down. It's flush with the parking lot. And I was skiing by myself, so I talked to a lot of the locals on the 6-packs I rode, and everyone just loved the chair. And I felt like before, that terrain over there is awesome. It's some of the best blue terrain anywhere. Just super approachable, super interesting, and it was very underutilized. So setting that all up again for the listeners, and again, I appreciate that you were working in Michigan when that lift went in, I believe in 2022. But what can you tell us, Mike, from your understanding of how Sunrise 6 has changed the way that folks ski Stowe and approach that mountain and plan their ski day, and also how it spreads traffic out, maybe?
Yeah, I think you hit it like the nail on the head there of just like it's so accessible, right?
Yeah.
Like that is something we're always thinking about, right? Of how we make things easier and better for the guests and the employee, right? And so that accessibility was, the team. I've talked a lot with the folks here in Mountain Ops and with maintenance, and a lot with the guests as well, what they think. And oftentimes, it's everybody ups the 6-pack, right? Or the double triple, as they affectionately refer to it.
The double triple, that's funny.
And there is a reason, because it's accessible. It is, we extended the footprint a little bit there, right? So that for that reason. And it just makes it easier for folks to get around and navigate. We've doubled the uphill capacity in that area, right? Like, people like new chairlifts for sure, but like that was intentional to make sure that we spread out the flow for sure. And also like it is like positioned so well that it maintains really well in the wind as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So, like, it's a heavy chairlift. It's positioned really well, and it is often like it runs through pretty much all of the wind issues that we get up here. So that's another really kind of thoughtful. There's a lot of thought into a lot of these different things. I know the guests love it, right? And that's why we have committed to keeping it like one of the early lifts, and it's made a big difference for sure.
Do you get the sense from talking to the folks who've been on the ground there for a long time that it's taken some pressure off Forerunner in particular? I imagine maybe less the gondola, because that's such different peak that access is.
Yeah, I would say like throughout the day, it certainly does take pressure off the other lifts for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's also like it's like visible, right? So like when you get out of your car in the parking lot, like you can see it.
Yeah.
And like I know you know this, but right, like oftentimes the trails people see from the chairlift, or the lifts people see from their car, are where they go. And so it's just like that natural. It's got that kind of draw to folks. But there are the quad people that are at the quad, and they will always go to the quad, and there are gondola people that are at the gondola, and they'll always go to the gondola. And so like that certainly has not changed, but like for the general public and the general guest who shows up, for sure, it definitely sees a lot more action than the trip river.
So let's talk about Forerunner a little bit. For my money and from my experience, it is one of the best lifts, I would say, in the country, and I say that confidently, for just racking up vert on great terrain. It serves the front four. It's fast. I'm curious, as you look, and this is the second high-speed quad you've had already in that position, and it's been there since 2011. So this is a 2,000 vertical foot rise, and I racked up so much vert, even though I didn't get there till 10:30. It was my biggest vert day of the year, like 36,000 or something. And that lift just cranks, and I love it. I'm curious, and again, I know this before your time, this planning, so I'm not sure how much you know about this. If they considered maybe putting in a 6 or an 8 at Forerunner, or if you're considering that in the future. I know that lift's not that old, but I think that there's so many trails off the top. I think that part of Stowe can absorb a lot of skiers. It never feels crowded once you get off the lift. So just curious on your thoughts on Forerunner, and maybe if some changes were considered in the past, what the calculus was to stick with that 4.
Yeah, I think, we have an amazing mountain operations leader here in Scott Reeves, and Scott and his team are always thinking about those things whenever they're making any adjustments. He is he's not new to Stowe or to lifts and putting in new lifts. So we've talked about it before. He absolutely thought about a lot of stuff, and I think a lot of folks thought about different options there. And ultimately, a quad is the perfect lift right there, and it is right now. I don't know, maybe that changes in the future, possibly. But I think one of the things you said, right, of getting off the lift at the top and it not feeling crowded up there is kind of intentional, right? And that is, I think the quad serves the right purpose. It gets people there fast. It is a great lift, and yeah, I think it right now serves its purpose for sure. And I don't think that a 6-pack or anything bigger really would be necessary there for sure. But we're always thinking about those things whenever we're gonna try to make any infrastructure changes or updates. We're always looking at all the options.
So Mike, can you tell us how the lookout double factors into that calculus? Because the trail map will be in the article that accompanies this on stormskiing.com, but the lookout double runs roughly parallel to the Forerunner quad. It's a 1979 double chair, slow old guy. I love it. One of my favorite trails on Stowe is not actually a trail, but the lookout double lift line is just steep and bumpy, and it's awesome if you can hit it right. So it lands quite a bit lower on the mountain than the Forerunner quad, but it's there. It's pretty explicitly a reserve lift. Curious how much you actually run the lookout double these days, because I imagine Sunrise is also part of that calculus and may have changed that. So is that still considered an active reserve lift for Forerunner? Do you use that a lot, and will that have a role in perpetuity at Stowe?
Yeah, I love riplets, first of all, right? And my time in the Midwest certainly instilled that in me. It's a great lift and it serves its purpose. We run it when we see when we're more popular and we see a lot of folks around, and the people who know about it, use it, right? It still gets you to a lot of some of the best terrain on Mansfield. So it's also really powerful if last year the quad was down, we ran the lookout, and it was important that we had that lift there. Now, if we ever look to update that lift, if it's when it comes down to that lift in line of things that we have to do here or want to do here, I think we would consider what kind of lift we might put in there. Maybe it might be another fixed grip double, right? But it is certainly used and cared for and loved by many. It definitely serves its purpose for sure.
So you have that nice upgrade at Sunrise. Sounds like you're pretty happy with Forerunner. Looking at the rest of your lift fleet, pretty much everything has an install year with a 2 in front of it, which is good. That's a benchmark I use a lot. Was it installed this century? And there's plenty of lifts from the last century that are working just fine in the 90s, 80s, 70s, even 60s. Looking at this though, Toll House 1983. I mean, that's basically a transfer lift that is rarely used. I think you could probably run that thing until the end of time. Lookout, we just talked about extensively. The only other remaining lift from before the 2000s is the Mansfield gondola, installed in 1991. I'm not sure if it's had new cabins, something like that in between. I would imagine that's probably the next big upgrade, and that doesn't mean necessarily replacing it. Sometimes there's a lot of ways to modernize and make a lift better. Are there any thoughts on the future of the Mansfield gondola and what it may take to modernize that, and if anything like that is necessary in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, well, you are correct about the cabins. They have been refurbished, right? I think it's important to call out, the most important thing around the lift is the way they're maintained and cared for. And the team here the maintenance team here is amazing, and they put a lot of care and time into all of their lifts. The gondola has been maintained really well. And I think Yeah, it's easy to say to look at like the age of a lift and kind of make some assumptions around that, but really like the age of a lift is dictated by how well you maintain it, right?
Mhm.
Like that is, and I know you know that, but I think it's just important to call out. And yeah, I think we're always looking at ways to upgrade the resort and the experience here. I don't know that that would be the first thing I would point to in particular, because it's a great lift that runs really well and serves its purpose, and yeah, it's maintained really well.
So the footprint at Stowe. So when I was researching this, and for whatever reason, I kind of assumed that Spruce was newer, but it's on trail maps going back decades and decades, back to the 60s and probably before. So Stowe has had substantively the same footprint for a very long time. Now, you're in this unique pocket of land, and it's not like the West where you're operating in a Forest Service permit. I believe you have some state land in there. I think there's some private land. I think there's maybe some federal land around there. I don't know. Can you set us straight on who owns Stowe and what sort of agreement or lease you're operating under? And furthering that, if there's any opportunity to expand the ski footprint at some point.
Mansfield is state forest.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the land we operate on is there's a good amount of private land, the Spruce Peak side, and then a lot of it is also state forest. There's no federal land that we operate on. Yeah, we work really closely with the state, and we're always talking about like be good stewards of our environment, of our space, and about this mountain that people care and love it so much. And yeah, I think like there is a really deep history in these trails here, and like who has cut them and where they come from, and that's a really powerful thing. And yeah, the backcountry access is really amazing. I think people really love that. And so right now, like I would say, like I was thinking about ways to improve the terrain we have, and the terrain we work around. There's no like direct plan of like, I think there's a million people that could point to areas. Well, if you cut this here, it would, you'd be able to open up this whole area. But I think there's a really good balance around what we have and the availability we have here. And the backcountry access that folks get to enjoy as well is really powerful. And so like that balance, I think right now is where it should be. And I think I spend a lot of time hiking around this resort, and I look at it a lot. And so I'm always asking questions about what is, why is there this market that's just randomly in this area over here? So there's always been plans to kind of constantly be thinking about that, and we're always doing that, but nothing like to point to like there's this big plan that we have, right? For sure.
The most common thinking around how Stowe would get bigger is to connect with Smuggler's Notch, which is you sort of touch. So Spruce Peak goes up and Sterling Peak at Smugs, and you can skate across that pond. And at one time, way back, there was an official ski connection, then a snowcat fell in the pond. It's a whole thing we don't have to get into here. But Smuggler's Notch is an amazing resort and very different from Stowe. Like I said, they're all very different in Vermont. Lots of old double chairs. I love Smugs. Everyone loves Smugs. There was talk a couple years ago, Smugs was considering building a gondola across the top to connect Sterling and Spruce. Very explicitly, Vail and Stowe said Smugs is taking the lead on that. Talk to them about it. We have no comment. But I'm going to ask again a couple years later, is there anything going on with a possible gondola connection to Smuggler's Notch from Stowe?
Yeah. So there is no current conversation around that at all. I actually work, I met Bill. I know him personally. Like we've talked a lot, and Mark Delaney, who operates runs a lot of their operation over there, is a great guy. Actually, he and I and a few other folks walked Snuffy's trails, what you're talking about, the connecting trail there.
Okay.
Because we've been, just like I'm always interested in learning more, and right, like just being like having conversations, and like I say, like I look around at this resort a lot. Yeah, that's really the truth is that's a conversation that I believe Smugs started, and I think if we were gonna go to that conversation, that would be something that Smugs would have to initiate, right? I'm not the one who chooses who and how we purchase resorts, but we're very thoughtful about things that fit the portfolio and make the experience for everyone better. And we also are thoughtful about how it impacts communities, right? And so, like, if there was ever a conversation that Snow's wanted to bring up, I'm sure we would be open to listening for sure. But it's not something that we're actively go getting or anything like that.
It's really cool for folks who are not familiar with the area because there is a road directly between Smugs and Stowe, but it's closed in the winter, Route 108. So you can ski between, but you have to drive. It's what, like a 40-minute drive to get over to Jefferson, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you would have to drive all the way around through like on 100 to get there. The notch, it's another one of those things that like, man, like you just don't understand how much there is here until you're here and you experience it. People snowshoe and like cross country ski in the notch all winter long. It closes and it's just, would be virtually impossible to plow that road with the amount of snow it gets. So it would be an interesting dynamic for sure. Sure, we're not the only ones in the world that have dealt with similar things like that. That would definitely be interesting.
Yeah. So one of the things I love about Stowe is, I mean, it has a great trail footprint and very thoughtful and very classic, and it's that sort of windy New England stuff you always hear about. What I really like is the trees, and you can ski the trees almost everywhere. Vermont, the northern Vermont in particular, gets that nice consistent snowpack where you almost always have glades open, and it's one of the few places in the East where you can really count on having glades. Some of the feedback I get from readers the most is that I really need to do an audit on how large ski areas are and how large they claim. And a lot of ski areas measure differently, and it's a little idiosyncratic, and a lot of them exaggerate. Stowe, I've always thought, goes the other way. 485 acres doesn't sound that big. Stowe skis 5 times bigger than that because you can ski almost everything. So the way I have deduced this is that in general in the West, they count everything within the border as skiable acreage. In the East, they tend to count trail acreage. 2 that do count like the West are Smugglers, your neighbor, which says it's 1,000 acres. It's definitely not bigger than Stowe. And Killington, which claims like 1,600. It's also, I don't think, that much bigger than Stowe, if at all, because again, the trees. So these are all my assumptions, right? I don't know. This is just kind of what I gather. So Can you tell us about that 485 number? That seems really small to me. Is that just trails? Have you considered also counting the trees?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things there. The 485 is let me back up. I should say this. Our team is so diligent about doing the right thing and be like, our snow reporters often say this, that they have a receipt for every inch of snow that they report. Like what they go through to make sure that they are reporting accurately, like, is just impressive. There's no other word for it. And that kind of mentality resonates throughout this resort, which is another reason why I love it so much. And the 485 is reference to what's managed, what's maintained, and what's patrolled, right? And like that's a really important distinction. So there are glades in there for sure that are trail map that are included in that 485. And that's what we manage, maintain, and patrol. And that's a really important piece there. I mean, if you looked at Mount Mansfield and started, I mean, it's endless for sure. But the 485 is in reference to that. And we take those things really seriously because like we want to be, we want to be accurate and we want to be honest and direct and like make sure that we are, it's the right thing to do in our opinion.
Yeah, your Altera competitor, Sugarbush, right down the road, also uses a similar standard of measurement. And Mad River Glen also reports, I think, much smaller than it skis. So I just want to make that point for the listeners that if you're not from the region, you want to come in. Stowe skis more of the size of a Western resort. So there are some. I do want to talk about the trail network a little bit in relation to the front four. Now, I think there's always this fear, and unfounded or not, it's out there that Vail will change things when they come in, and in the front four are these legendary trails. So tell us a little bit about the front four, and then is there some sort of institutional guideline that says, okay, we're not gonna, we understand what the front four is, and we're not gonna come in and groom the front four, or make them something they're not, or widen the trails to appeal to the masses, because they shouldn't appeal to the masses. They should be the front four. They should be hard and tough and gnarly. So tell us about these trails in the history behind them, and how Vail or Stowe, or however you want to frame it, is making sure you respect that history.
Yeah. The answer is absolutely. Our focus is to preserve what makes this place unique. Mm-hmm. Those are the four most beloved trails: the Big National, Lift Line, Goat, and Star, and they're all unique in their own way. And so, and like, I should call out that, like, the folks who maintain those spaces are like a lot of the same people who have been maintaining those spaces for a really long time, right? And they're passionate about those spaces. And so, yeah, I think the one I often hear at the bottom of the blog from folks is like, don't groom lift line, let it bump up. Or then the other side is like, groom lift line, we don't want it to bump up. And like, so there's always like that tension in the air about what folks, even the most tenured locals who've been here for decades, they some of them don't even agree on what we should be doing up there. This year we actually did take an approach where, like, oh, we'll groom half of it and we'll leave some of it to bump up. And like, there's always opinions on that, but ultimately, like, those are historic trails, and they are unique, and we will absolutely preserve that.
So one thing you did change that I thought was awesome was, for the first time that I'm aware of, Stowe extended its season. It's almost always been third week in April, we're done. And you could compete with Killington. You have the snow, you have the exposure and everything. Generally don't. But I thought it was cool to extend the season for a week. Was this a one-off, Mike, or was this an experiment, and one that you would like to continue and maybe push Stowe's season a little bit later on a more regular basis?
I believe last year we extended a little bit after to the third weekend of April, past where we were originally kind of historically closed. So I think that actually happened last year as well. But yes, you're right. Like, we pushed it a little bit harder. We had an amazing snow year, right? And I think it was one of the longest seasons in over a decade. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of consideration that goes into making those decisions, right? It is not a just kind of really easy, just like, yeah, we'll just do this thing, right? Like, it means, like, our work needs to we need to adjust, right? And like, that means that, like, we're gonna start maybe some projects a little bit later. It means that there's just like a lot of things that need to be considered before we make a decision like that. And it was absolutely the right thing to do for the amazing ski year that we had, and for the guests. And yeah, I think absolutely we would always consider doing that if it's the right year and it makes sense and we have a similar snowpack, for sure. Mother Nature was really giving to us last year, so we had to pay it forward, I think.
Yeah, Mother Nature in general takes care of you. And again, Northern Vermont is one of the few places in the East with very reliable snowpack. Your neighbor, Mad River Glen, famously does not make snow above 2,300 feet. That's part of their charter. They're a very unusual ski area. Jay Peak, which claims more snow than Stowe every year, has always been water challenged. And they did just make a big update with some new HKD fixed guns, and that should help them out a lot. However, I don't know much, admittedly, about Stowe's snowmaking system and capabilities. So, because you could scrape it together without, right, most years. But I'd imagine you have a pretty good system. So do you have a top to bottom system? Just talk to us about the extensiveness of Stowe's snowmaking and ambitions long term of what you would like that system to be.
Yeah, so we have snowmaking top to bottom in essentially all of our main, like, if you think to the top of the quad, to the top of the gondola, to the top of Spruce. Not only is the snowmaking infrastructure amazing, like the actual snowmakers are just amazing here,
Hmm.
and all the folks that support them, like the grooming and snow services operations team. So like, yeah, we have a really robust snowmaking system. We've got a 110 million gallon pond and then a 3 million gallon pond that feeds off the river down there as well. We've got strong pumping capacity. We've got strong electrified air compressors. So it's a hardy system for sure. A lot of HKDs, some older SMIs as well. Yeah, and it's we've just made this huge. We worked with Efficiency Vermont this year to we're going to replace I think 100% of our nozzles this year to
Mm.
a little bit more efficient. So we're always looking at those little. I mean, we replaced a bunch of snowmaking pipe this year as well, and so we're always looking at like those. We're looking at the whole system always, right? Like but those small tweaks go a long ways. And so I'm not, I don't, I think new technology is amazing, but I don't think that like we always just need to replace snow guns to do better, right? Like I think
Hmm.
that's it's a big thing before we start to do like some of the smaller things, like just put brand new nozzles on all of the snow guns, make huge impact on efficiency. And so, yeah, I'm pretty proud of the work that the team does here. And I mean, they've been doing it for a long time. And it's snowmaking, so it's always got its challenges for sure.
Yeah. So another big change at Stowe was paid parking in 2022. Again, I appreciate you weren't there, but it seems as though Stowe is happy with the way that reordered traffic and patterns. So it it seems like it's here to stay. Are you continuing to tweak that program? From your understanding, how has that helped Stowe to get traffic flowing a little bit better on the property, particularly on weekends?
Yeah, it works really well. It serves
Hmm.
its purpose really well, right? Like the in the working relationship that we have with Green Mountain Transit, right, in supporting them, and has made a huge impact there. For something like 43% of the cars in the Mansfield parking lot are groups of four or more, right? The carpooling piece actually really works really
Hmm.
well. People have kind of like yeah they've adjusted and it was an adjustment for sure, but it serves the purpose of we track there's so much data that we have like I kind of lose it sometimes because it's just there's just so much.
Yeah.
Like we track the outflow, right? And we use like analytical tools that like track like how long the like it takes from the Mansfield parking lot to get to the Loose Hill turn, to get to Weeks Hill Road, to get to town, right? And we track how often there's delays of 30 minutes or more, right? And initially there was somewhere in the double digits of those. And now this past year there's only four, which
Mm.
which only one of those four was not caused by an accident or weather.
Oh,
Right. So
wow.
that is a really impactful statistic when we talk about like how it's working. And we're always looking at doing better, right? Like we've adjusted kind of the way we like even little things like where we put signs and how we engage the guests when they start first park and like just little tweaks. We're really like I really am focused on like making the bus riding experience better, right? Like I would love to work with the town and some folks, and we're talking about it around like putting in bus stops, making sure that that entire experience from soup to nuts is really kind of at the level that guests and the ridership expects. The bus ridership has gone up, right? And there's always a plateau. So like there's a steep rise in bus ridership the first couple of years, and then smaller incremental rise year over year for sure. But it's yeah, it's worked. It's served its purpose, and yeah, I think that there's folks that made the hard decision, and it was for the right reasons.
The Cottonwoods out in Utah, Brighton, Solitude, Alta Snowbird have had some luck with connecting their pass, a ski pass, to the bus pass, particularly the Icon Pass. I don't know if Stowe's system is free or if this is something you've considered, allowing people access with Epic Pass. Is that anything like that in the works?
Yeah, well, we're always looking at new ideas to make the guest experience and the proposition a little bit better. It is free, and we make the joke often that we're gonna put a coffee bar or like a real bar on the bus to kind of promote more people riding it. But no, it's a vital. It's really great for the whole community. Actually, people, employees and folks from the lodges and all the inns and the restaurants use it all the time, and so it's a powerful and important piece of this area.
Yeah, one way you have that pinch point coming up from the town of Stowe, Route 108, and there's not much you can do about that. And widening a road is a lot harder than it sounds. One way to reduce traffic is to give people more places to stay on the mountain. And you do have that nice little village at the base of Spruce. And I know people love Stowe and they love staying down there. But you do have these gigantic parking lots over on the Mansfield side. Seems like there might be room to build condos, hotels. And I'm in the minority here. A lot of people are like, don't build stuff. I'm like, we need more base development at the mountains to help mitigate traffic. That's a whole other discussion. My question for you is that possible? Is it something that Vail has considered? I know they're not really in the real estate business now, but I don't know if it's state land on that side and you can't build anything but lodges, but is there the potential to maybe build more beds at the base of Stowe, either for employees or guests, to help mitigate that traffic a little bit?
Yeah. So I think an important call out here is like the folks who own and operate the Spruce Peak lodges and like HOAs in various different places like the lodge and the treehouse we do not own and operate that, right? And so we work really closely with them. They're great partners, and we're often talking about how we can make sure that we're working together and make the experience, because the guest that comes here doesn't know that, right? And we're not the type of individuals that want to be like, well, we don't own that or operate that, so we don't care, or we're not, they're all our guests. So like that is a really important piece for us, that we continue that partnership. But also they do it really well, right? They are really good at operating that lodging piece in the hospitality piece. And so that's more in their court of if we see further development. I would definitely say the Mansfield Base Lodge is a historic, literally it is on the registry in the state of Vermont. Mm-hmm. Brian Linder, who is a ski patroller here for over 40 plus years, literally grew up in that base lodge. Literally his room was in that base lodge. So it holds a lot of meaning and a lot of history. And so although we are I would love to make it a better experience and grow that lodge a little bit, and just kind of I do see a path in the future of just upgrading it a little to a certain extent. There's just a lot of history and things right in that area that I really want to. I don't think anyone really will want to. Also, there's a lot of really amazing lodges around Mountain Road. When you drive 108, there are so many awesome lodges and inns, and those people are great at operating their spaces, and they do a great job, and it works for us.
All right. So while I'm dodging the tomatoes that the Stowe locals are throwing at me for asking that question, I want to let you go, but I have a couple real quick Epic Pass lift ticket questions. So it looks like Rob Katz again has talked a lot about lift tickets and changing philosophy behind lift tickets. I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but the data I have is that Stowe's top lift ticket will decrease a little from $239 last year to $235 this year. Correct that if it's wrong. But the point is, it didn't go up by $20 like it has been almost every other year. Can you talk a little bit about the conversation that went on internally and how deliberate that decision was to not raise and in fact slightly lower Stowe's top lift ticket as you look ahead to this winter?
Yeah. So it is the holiday lift ticket, right, during some of our more popular times is not going down.
Okay.
It is maintaining though, right? And so,
Mhm.
um, but you're absolutely right. Like there's been a lot of conversation and a lot of thought about our lift tickets. And so that's why Epic Friends tickets were just like huge, right? Like that right off the bat is just like 50%, regardless of the day, regardless of what
Mhm.
was just like walk up, make it easy, simplify the process because we shouldn't be complicating things, right? And so that is such a powerful thing. And so if you're, you know, if your buddy who does, happen to ski Sugar Bush for whatever reason, like want to come up to Stowe, there it is, right? Like it, that's a really powerful kind of tool that we've given our pass holders to be able to, yeah, bring along whoever may be interested. The Epic Day Pass is also a really great thing that folks can utilize, right? The 1 to 7 days. There's a lot of flexibility in there. It's anywhere from 40 to $80 depending on where you go and how many days you put. So I would always lean in on that pass product as well. And yeah, I mean, we're always looking at our lift tickets, right? And I think there sounds to be, based on what Rob says, yeah, a renewed approach or thought about how we look at those. And it seems that there's excitement around that. So yeah, but this year, that pricing is going to remain.
Yeah, I think it does a nice job of, for the first time in several years, making Stowe an approachable last minute option. I mean, yes, there's that step of you have to know the person with the Epic Pass, but there are so many good ski areas in northern Vermont, and as much as I love them all, I can imagine living there, you would want a little bit of variety. I'm curious about Stowe skiers, Stowe locals in particular, and the way they use the Epic Pass, because Stowe is really that alpha in Vermont. Do you see your locals mostly using it to go out west? Do you see some of them maybe going over to Wildcat or down to Okemo, or tell us a little bit about the Stowe local and the relationship to the Epic Pass and how they like to use that product.
Yeah, I think yeah, we certainly we like the pass holders are robust, right? There's it's really kind of the main way folks access our resort for the local population, and yeah, we do see folks go to Okemo, right? Or like
Yeah.
I know people that have talked to me about going down to Mount Snow because of Corinthia, right? So like that's a
Yeah.
really powerful thing. And then also like Centipede and some other, I hear Wildcat from time to time for sure. And folks definitely use that. I think we definitely way more see people like going to Crack, going to Whistler, going to
Yeah.
the places for sure. I walk around a lot in the community and I often see a random Vail hat or a Beaver Creek hat or a Whistler sweatshirt. So folks are definitely taking advantage of that, and that's why it's so awesome.
Let me ask you one last question about Epic Day Pass, and this is a Midwest question. So again, apologies to the New England folks here, but there's this really cool bonus that Vail doesn't really promote, in my opinion, very well, and it's basically whatever number of days you have on your all resorts Epic Day Pass, you get an equal number of bonus days between Afton and Wilmot and Brighton. Maybe they promote it better locally. I don't know, but it's in the fine print nationally. So talk a little bit about how popular or not. I mean, did folks take advantage of that in Michigan? Was that a good benefit? And then I'm curious why Vail didn't add its other Midwestern resorts to that bonus.
Yeah, people definitely do take. You get a lot of folks who utilize that pass, like say a Brighton local. I'll talk about that, right? That will be able to reserve their Epic Day Pass for their trip to Breckenridge, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and that still gets them, a handful of days to warm up the legs and do all, and show up at Brighton. As far as like Ohio and Indiana, they have like a really robust like pass program and individual benefits down there as well. So
Mm-hmm.
like we kind of focus on those more intentionally locally than Michigan or after sort of good. Sure. And it does get use.
All right, I got one last Stowe question for you on the way out the door, and this is
Yeah.
something I've always been curious about. Stowe might be the earliest opening ski area in the day anywhere. Because I think sometimes you open the lifts at 7 or 7:30. Can you just talk a little bit about which lifts open early and kind of generally when and why that's important at Stowe?
It's at 8 a.m. 8
Okay.
a.m. start at the Forerunner Quad and
Yeah.
at Six Pack is a really important piece of what makes this resort so unique.
Mhm.
And it is the first thing I heard about arriving on why from folks in the community, and it is often the first. It is often talked about to me of hey, just don't get rid of this one thing. And so
Yeah.
there's just a really people are very passionate. Like the folks who ski this mountain, literally, like I know the 10 individuals that are going to be at the quad every single day at 10 a.m. Like they are there at 8 a.m. Sorry. They are there every single day. And that's really important. And folks, I see folks that are there and then they bring their kids to school afterwards, or they go and they go to work afterwards. So I can't speak to why it's been in existence here for sure.
Yeah.
I've gone back decades. It's been a part of this resort's culture, and I think like we're focused on keeping those cultural things alive for our resorts, and I'm focused on that for Stowe for sure.
All right, Mike, I've been greedy with your time, and I appreciate you humoring me on all this. I know you got a mountain to run, so I will let you go. I cannot thank you enough. I am so psyched to get Stowe on the pod finally. It has not been a deliberate oversight. It just took us a while to make it happen, but I really appreciate you finally doing that. So thanks so much, Mike. Hopefully I can come up and make some turns with you this winter.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stuart. It's really been awesome to be here. It's an honor. Thank you.
All right, Storm, that was Mike Giorgio, Vice President and General Manager of Stowe Mountain, Vermont. Awesome job, Mike. Thank you so much for all that insight on one of America's most important and historic ski areas. Lots more podcasts coming your way. I have a ton in the can, and I am booking new guests all the time. You will want to subscribe to the Storm Skiing newsletter at stormskiing.com to get those podcasts the moment they are live. You can also follow the Storm on X, Instagram, and YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. Until next time, stay well, stay safe. I'm Stuart Winchester, and I'll talk to you again very soon.
The Storm Skiing Podcast is a Quicksilver Films production.